For if, in fact, the very foundation of their faith, that Jesus was the Messiah, that he was the Son of God, if, in fact, that was true, then who best to represent the divinity than the offspring of Jesus himself? And so it is our suggestion that the Holy Roman Church launched the Crusades not to save the Holy Land, not from some altruistic and benevolent intent, but in fact to descend on the Holy Land, to seize it and prevent the descendants of Jesus from proclaiming themselves. There was a hunt to find the holy blood, to find the grail, the vessels of the holy blood, and to terminate their existence. It is our suggestion that the Crusades were an illusion, an attempt to stop the return of the divinity's offspring to the throne of the Holy Land. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest to you that we have been deceived, we have been manipulated, and we have been cheated. Jesus did not die on the cross. Evidence is much more strongly in the favor of that conclusion than that he died. This does not in any way, shape, or form remove the teachings and the meanings behind his words. It does, however, remove the power foundation of an institution which has become the single most powerful and richest institution on our planet. Please, examine the Dead Sea Scrolls deception, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Jesus and the riddle of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Jesus conspiracy, the Passover plot, those incredible Christians, the Messianic legacy, and on and on and on. After the epoch in which Jesus was supposedly crucified, for the next 300 years, followers of Jesus, those who had been branded outlaws, found themselves scattered throughout the Holy Land. According to research, the efforts to produce the Gospels did not occur until nearly 80 years later. The epoch, the era, was confusing. There were apprentices, there were disciples, there were rabbis, there were people who were telling numerous stories. In fact, it is said that there were nearly 200 holy Gospels, holy books, about Jesus, about the Messiah, about the Son of God. Roughly 300 years later, a king rose to power in Rome. He was known as Constantine. Constantine, attempting to produce a one-world empire, sought to make Christianity the official religion of the empire. Why? Because the Christians, so diverse in their beliefs and so confused, seeking to survive, were willing to accept pagan holidays, pagan thoughts, were willing to twist the religion into anything necessary for their own survival. As you know, there are those people of that time who simply did not accept Jesus as the Messiah, and they did so with strong evidence. Constantine also believed that Jesus had not fulfilled the prophecies of the Messiah. In fact, Constantine believed that he was the actual Messiah, that he had fulfilled the prophecies far better, far more strongly than Jesus ever could have. He was the emperor of Rome. The early Christian followers, willing to accept Constantine to some degree, were called together. Constantine gathered together approximately 1,500 religious scholars of the time, experts in the Gospels, experts in the stories. He gathered them together in 325 AD, and he produced an event known as the Council of Nicaea. He addressed the council and ask them to proclaim him the Messiah, to produce those stories which would prove his divinity. Nearly 1,200 of the attending Hebrew Christian scholars rejected immediately the idea that Constantine was the Messiah. Constantine, true to political tradition, immediately expelled the 1,200 who did not follow his will. They were cast out, and less than 300 so-called experts remained. And they very willingly gathered together the stories, the Gospels, which supported the possibility that Constantine was the Messiah. In their political effort, they tossed out books like the Book of Mary, the Book of Enoch, other books which you can find today. They're known as the apocryphal books or the lost books of the Garden of Eden. These are books that were rejected. Those books, which were considered to be the official storyline of Constantine and the Roman Empire, became what we now know as the Holy Bible. Curiously, one of the books that was tossed out, the Book of Enoch, is one that Jesus quotes from in the Bible itself. Yet it was considered to be invalid, that it simply could not be a religious effort, a work of God. The Book of Mary was also tossed out. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest to you that the creation of the Bible, the creation of Christianity, was a political effort, both by those Christians who wanted power and one King Constantine. The Council of Nicaea in 325 A.D. can be researched very, very carefully. The Romans were very good at keeping records, and what I have just suggested to you can be found in numerous sources. The Bible and the Christian Church were a political effort. What happened over the next few hundred years was not an expansion of a well-received religion. Christianity did not expand because individuals came to the church freely, seeing the wonder and the glory of the religion. In fact, they were forced to accept. They were forced to follow the edicts of the church and Constantine, or they were simply terminated. The valid teachings, the valid words of a teacher of righteousness had become the instruments of a political organization. Over the next few hundred years, by force, by might, and by extermination, the Christian church grew under the guidance of several popes whose history lays on the dark side. As I mentioned a little bit ago, the Crusades were started by the Holy Christian Church in an effort to seek out and find the descendants of Jesus and Mary. We have in approximately 1100 A.D. the creation of a new group. This group was known as the Knights Templar, the Knights of the Temple. Formed by Sir Hugh Payans, these 9 warrior monks were brought together in order to protect the pilgrims on their travels to the holy city of Jerusalem. Prior to their existence, Arab thieves, robbers, would descend upon these holy pilgrims and would take away their gifts, would take away their money, and they simply looted the highway bandits of the holy road to Jerusalem. Under the guidance of Sir Hugh Payans, these 9 warrior monks patrolled the highways, patrolled the roads, and they protected the pilgrims. So well received were they by some of the Europeans that they were granted the actual Temple of King Solomon as their headquarters. Now, the Knights Templar have a very curious history. There are some people who consider them to be a secret society, others who consider them to be wonderful examples of knighthood. Generally, however, the history books do not treat the Templars very well. In our research, it appears that in the Temple of King Solomon, the Knights Templar, by digging through the floor, by exploring the chambers hidden underneath, it is very likely that they, in fact, discovered the treasure known as the gold of King Solomon. Because after less than 20 years of being in existence, the Knights suddenly had extraordinary wealth. Originally, they were so poor that they often shared one horse. In fact, the Templar seal shows two knights on horseback astride one warrior steed. Their oaths were that of poverty. They could not smile. They could not enjoy. They were celibate. They were poor. And yet 20 years later, they lived at the height of luxury and wealth. But their power expanded. They brought more knights into their group. And in time, they were so extraordinarily received by the Europeans that lords and princes by the dozens flocked to join the order. The Knights Templar, because the Vatican, because the Christian Church did not have a standing army of its own, the Knights Templar were received as the unofficial militia of the Christian Church.